You walked down the aisle with confidence, believing that prenups were a safety net. You thought those signatures meant peace of mind. No surprises, no battles, no regrets. But now that the marriage has ended, you find yourself back in court, watching your prenup unravel in ways you never imagined. What if I told you that many women discover too late that their ironclad agreement can be challenged, that assets vanish if they weren't listed properly, and that support waivers aren't always set in stone? Worse, you might learn that anything touching your children, support, custody, visitation, can't be negotiated ahead of time at all. In the next few minutes, we'll dismantle the 5 most common myths women cling to about prenups after divorce. You'll see why your prenup isn't as unbreakable as you believed, and what you can do right now to protect yourself before another courtroom twist leaves you empty-handed. If you ever thought your prenup had you covered, prepare to have your assumptions tested and your strategy sharpened, so you can walk away with the security you deserve. You believed your prenup was unassailable, the ultimate safeguard against financial fallout. But here's the reality. Prenups can be set aside if a court finds them unfair or improperly executed. Imagine signing under pressure or without fully understanding the fine print. If a judge determines you were coerced, rushed, or didn't receive independent legal advice, they can throw out the entire agreement. Even clauses that look rock solid on paper can crumble if they violate state rules or public policy. Like waiving support entirely in a long marriage. I've seen cases where women, convinced their prenup was ironclad, ended up back in court fighting for spousal support because the judge ruled the original deal unconscionable. So before you rest easy, remember that a prenup is only as strong as the process that created it, and that wasn't the whole story. You might assume your prenup sweeps in every asset, every bank account, investment, and inheritance, even those you didn't think to list. That belief can cost you dearly. In truth, a prenup only governs what's spelled out in its schedules. Anything you acquire afterward, or forget to put on the list, can fall outside its protections. Consider the case of Emma, who meticulously detailed her savings and her ex's business interests. Yet she never updated the agreement when her spouse received a substantial inheritance 2 years before the divorce. When they split, that inheritance was treated as separate property, claimed entirely by him, leaving her with no share. Or think about retirement benefits. If your prenup doesn't specify how to divide accounts opened or funds accrued after signing, you could lose out on years of nest egg growth. And assets hidden in family trusts or simply overlooked, like that joint brokerage account you thought obvious, can slip through the cracks, unprotected. The lesson? A prenup is a snapshot in time, not a living document. If you don't anticipate future acquisitions or omissions, you risk walking away with far less than you bargained for. And what happens next can reshape your financial future entirely. You may have signed away your right to spousal support, believing that no alimony meant exactly that. No second thought, no second payments. But in many states, support waivers aren't carved in stone. Judges can set them aside if the financial gap between you and your ex becomes too wide, or if the marriage lasted long enough that you forfeited your ability to become self-sufficient. Picture Sarah, who waived support in her prenup after a 5-year marriage. She re-entered the workforce immediately, convinced she'd manage. But when a sudden health issue forced her off the job, she found herself unable to cover rent and medical bills. The court recognized the unfair hardship and awarded her temporary support, overriding the waiver she'd once thought absolute. Courts look at fairness and need, especially in long marriages or when one spouse sacrificed career advancement. If you gave up education, stayed home with the kids, or faced unemployment due to your ex's business moves, a judge may declare the waiver unconscionable. That doesn't mean you should rely on a last-minute courtroom reprieve, but it does mean those blanket disclaimers of support can be challenged, if you can prove the waiver leaves you destitute. So don't assume a spousal support clause is unbreakable. Understand the exceptions, and if you see a waiver in your prenup, consider whether it truly reflects your future needs. Because sometimes, what feels like a final goodbye can be reopened when your well-being depends on it. You might think your prenup can dictate everything, including how much support you pay and even who gets primary custody of the kids. But family courts won't enforce any clause that undermines a child's right to care and stability. Prenups can address property and spousal support, yes, but when it comes to children, the law always puts their best interests first. Take Mia's case. Her prenup included a clause capping child support at a fixed amount, regardless of income changes. When her ex's salary tripled, he insisted on sticking to that limit. The judge tossed out the cap, ruling that support must reflect the child's reasonable needs. Similarly, custody and visitation terms tucked into a prenup carry no weight. If a court deems them harmful to the child's welfare, they'll rewrite the arrangement from scratch. That means any attempt to negotiate away a child's right to adequate housing, education, or medical care gets swept aside. You can't pre-agree to restrict visitation, waive support, or pick a custodian in a way that conflicts with the child's welfare. If you see child-related language in your prenup, treat it as advisory at best, and be prepared for a judge to redraw the lines in your parenting plan. After all, no prenup clause can ever trump what's best for the kids. Your prenup might read like an unchanging contract, but life doesn't stand still, and neither do the courts. Significant shifts, like a decades-long marriage, a serious illness, or a spouse's sudden job loss, can give you grounds to revisit or even void parts of the agreement. Imagine you agreed to a short marriage prenup after 2 years together, then stayed married for 20 more. That original deal could look wildly unfair in hindsight, especially if you sacrificed career growth or health for the marriage. Judges often consider the length of the union and each spouse's contributions when deciding whether to enforce outdated terms. Or picture a scenario where you waived certain rights, only to face a catastrophic medical diagnosis that wipes out your savings. Courts recognize that drastic changes can create unconscionable outcomes, so they may modify support clauses or property divisions to prevent one spouse from being left destitute. In short, a prenup isn't necessarily your destiny. If your marriage evolves far beyond the moment you signed, you may have legal options to adjust, or even set aside, clauses that no longer reflect fairness. Knowing that your circumstances matter can empower you to challenge terms that would otherwise trap you in an outdated deal. Looking back, it's clear that prenups aren't the ironclad shields many women expect. Clauses can be thrown out if they're unfairly drafted, assets left off the schedules can slip through, and spousal support waivers can be challenged when life takes an unexpected turn. Any attempt to pre-negotiate child support or custody won't hold up if it conflicts with a child's best interests, and significant life changes. Long marriages, health crises, or financial upheavals can open the door to revisiting those terms. Understanding these 5 myths gives you the real power. Not to assume your prenup is unbreakable, but to know when and how you can challenge it. If you're navigating enforcement or facing surprises in your divorce, share which misconception caught you off guard in the comments below. Your experience could save someone else from the same mistake. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now. We'll keep unraveling the legal traps that hide in plain sight, so you can protect what matters most. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay empowered, and remember, a prenup isn't destiny. It's only the beginning of your financial story.